What happens when the weight of your past collides with the desperate cries of a stranger? On a rain-soaked night in Chicago, the city's usual vibrancy is drowned beneath a gray sky, yet amidst the downpour, Al Capone, once a notorious figure of power, finds himself on a path he never anticipated. The droplets cascading from the heavens mirror the tears of an elderly woman huddled on the sidewalk, her frail frame trembling in the cold. In her sorrowful gaze, he sees reflections of his own haunted past, the lives he shattered, the innocence he obliterated. The specter of guilt looms large, urging him to act. Al, a man weathered by time and regret, once relished in his dominion over the underworld, exuding an aura of invincibility. But beneath the hard exterior lies a soul wrestling with the consequences of his actions. Memories of betrayal and loss plague him, revealing vulnerabilities that belied his fearsome reputation. In this moment of unexpected connection, Al is stirred by an urge to atone for the darkness that has marred his existence. He's not just a mobster, he's a man searching for redemption, a flicker of hope amidst the ruins of his life. The setting of this tale is a city that never sleeps. Yet on this particular night, Chicago feels like a ghost town, its streets glistening under the relentless rain, creating a melancholic backdrop that amplifies Al's internal conflict. The once bustling avenues filled with vibrant life now echo with solitude. The clatter of rain on pavement acts as a haunting reminder of the fragility of existence, and it is here that the main conflict unfolds. Al learns that the old lady has been cruelly defrauded, stripped of her dignity and savings, and as he listens to her story of betrayal, he realizes that he cannot escape the shadows of his past. This chance encounter ignites a battle within him, a struggle between the remnants of his former life and the desire to emerge as a better man. Al must confront the very essence of who he is, challenging the notions of loyalty and strength he once held sacred. With each step he takes to help the woman regain her lost treasures, he dives deep into a journey of self-discovery, facing the demons that threaten to consume him. In a world that sees him only as a villain, he begins to navigate a path toward compassion and change, revealing that even the most hardened hearts can seek the light. As Al Capone leaned closer to the elderly woman, her story unfurled like a tattered scroll, a narrative woven with threads of deceit and loss. She spoke of a con artist who had wormed his way into her life, promising a better future, only to vanish with her hard-earned savings. The weight of her betrayal echoed in Al's heart, stirring memories of his own treachery. The faces of those he had wronged flashing before him like a slideshow of regret. The rain intensified, drumming a relentless rhythm against the pavement, mirroring the urgency that gripped his conscience. But the challenges ahead were far from simple. As he offered to help her, Al quickly discovered the tangled web that surrounded her plight. The con artist was not just a lowlife, he was deeply embedded in a network of crime, one that Al knew all too well. This realization sent a jolt of anxiety through him. The very people he had once called allies now posed a threat, and the prospect of re-entering that world ignited a flicker of fear within him. Would he be able to navigate this murky terrain without slipping back into old habits or losing sight of his newfound path? In the midst of this turmoil, a secondary character emerged. Maggie, a young woman who had been watching the interaction from a nearby cafe, her keen eyes absorbing every detail. She was a journalist, passionate about uncovering the truth, yet burdened by her own struggles for recognition in a male-dominated field. Drawn to Al's unexpected kindness, she approached him, offering her skills as a resource. Maggie was not just an ally, she represented the fresh perspective Al so desperately needed. However, her ambition clashed with Al's desire to keep her low profile, and the tension between them simmered with unspoken words. Initially, Al bristled at Maggie's insistence on involving the police and media, viewing her as a potential risk rather than a partner. His instinct was to resist, to retreat into the shadows where he felt safest. But as the reality of the con artist's connections became clearer, Al found himself grappling with the fear of failure, the gnawing anxiety that he might not only let the woman down, but also fall back into the darkness he was trying to escape. With each setback, threats from former associates warning him to stay out of their business and Maggie's relentless pursuit of the truth, Al faced a moment of reckoning. He was forced to confront not only the demons of his past, but also the very real implications of his choices. The emotional toll weighed heavily upon him, igniting a fierce battle between the hardened mobster and the man yearning for redemption. In this storm of conflict, Al's vulnerabilities became more pronounced, revealing the cracks in his steadfast exterior. The journey toward redemption was no longer just about helping an innocent woman. It was a test of his spirit, resilience, and willingness to embrace change. The rain fell in torrents as Al Capone wrestled with his internal turmoil, the weight of the elderly woman's plight heavy on his shoulders. Each moment spent debating whether to involve the authorities brought new revelations. He learned that the con artist had ties to a larger syndicate, one that had its tentacles deep within the city's corrupt underbelly. This wasn't just a simple case of theft. It was a calculated game of deceit with far-reaching implications. Al felt the familiar tug of fear and doubt creeping in, whispering that his past associations would come back to haunt him. Maggie, sensing Al's hesitance, pushed harder, her passion for justice igniting a fire that Al found both inspiring and intimidating. "We can't just sit back and wait for him to strike again," she insisted, her voice firm. But Al's instincts screamed to retreat, to avoid entanglement with the very men who once considered him a brother. He watched her, recognizing the unyielding spirit of a woman who had fought her way through a male-dominated field. Her determination to seek the truth stirred something within him, yet he also feared that her ambition could lead to their undoing. The pressure mounted when Al received a cryptic message from an old associate, a reminder that the shadows of his past were never far away. The note warned him to stay out of business that was not his anymore, a thinly veiled threat that sent chills down his spine. The stakes were rising, and with each passing day, the con artist remained at large, a phantom lurking just beyond the reach of justice. Al's resolve began to waver under the weight of these threats, and he found himself questioning whether he was truly capable of effecting change. As Maggie continued to gather information, she uncovered a shocking twist. The con artist was not just a petty thief. He had ties to a notorious crime lord who had a vendetta against Al. This revelation sent Al into a spiral of dread. Was he putting the elderly woman and Maggie at risk by stepping back into the fray? The very notion of failure loomed large, threatening to shatter the fragile bond they had begun to forge. In the midst of this chaos, Maggie's tenacity revealed another layer of her character. She had been fighting for recognition and respect, a struggle that resonated with Al on a deeply personal level. Yet self-doubt gnawed at him. He feared that by helping her, he was only dragging her down with him. As the tension between them simmered, their partnership teetered on the edge, each miscommunication threatening to unravel the trust they had built. With the threat of violence hanging over them, Al faced a pivotal decision. Would he step away, allowing the fear of his past to dictate his future, or would he embrace the uncertainty, risking everything for the chance to make things right? As the storm continued to rage outside, Al felt the tempest within him intensify, forcing him to confront the question that had haunted him for years. Could he truly change, or was he forever bound to the darkness he had once embraced? This moment of reckoning was not just a crossroads. It was a defining moment that would shape the path ahead for both him and Maggie. As Al Capone sat in the dim light of his office, the relentless rain drummed against the windows, mirroring the turmoil brewing inside him. Just when he thought he might find clarity, a phone call shattered the moment. It was Maggie, her voice trembling with urgency. "Al, you need to come to the shelter, now." The tone of her voice sent a jolt through him. He could hear the fear lacing her words, and a cold knot formed in his stomach as he rushed through the pouring rain to the elderly woman's refuge. Arriving breathless, he found Maggie surrounded by a small group of distraught residents, their faces etched with worry. As he pushed through the crowd, a sense of dread washed over him. "Al," Maggie said, her eyes wide with disbelief. "The con artist came here. He threatened Mrs. Henderson." His heart raced, the implications crashing over him like the storm outside. This was no longer just about the theft of money, it was about lives. The very woman he had hoped to protect was now in danger because of his indecision. He felt the weight of responsibility settle heavily on his shoulders. In that moment, his fear of the syndicate felt insignificant compared to the fear etched on the faces around him. "Oh God, what if he comes back?" whispered one of the residents, her voice quaking. The panic in the room was palpable, and Al could see the flickering light of bravery in Maggie's eyes as she turned to him, seeking strength. "Al, we have to do something," she urged, her voice steadying. "If we don't act now, he'll keep coming for them." Something shifted in Al's chest, a raw surge of adrenaline and clarity. He had spent too long caught in the web of his own fears, too long allowing the ghosts of his past to dictate his actions. But looking at Maggie, he saw the embodiment of courage and resolve. Her spirit ignited a fire in him, one that had long been dormant under the weight of regret and despair. At that moment, Al made a choice. He would no longer allow the shadows of his past to control his future. With a newfound determination, he turned to the residents and said, "We'll protect each other. We'll stand together. I won't let him hurt you." The words came out firm, echoing with a conviction he hadn't felt in years. Maggie's eyes sparkled with a mix of surprise and inspiration. In that instant, she saw a man reborn, shedding the layers of fear and hesitation that had previously held him captive. The partnership between them solidified, a bond forged in the fires of adversity. As they began to devise a plan, Al felt the weight of possibility shift. They would not just react, they would take the fight to the con artist and his syndicate. Al's heart raced at the thought of confronting the very darkness he had once embraced. This was the turning point he had needed, a moment that redefined his trajectory, igniting a passion for justice that had long been dormant. The storm outside began to wane, but inside, a tempest of determination brewed. Al and Maggie stood, united, ready to face whatever came their way. They were no longer alone. They had each other, and together they would rise against the tide of injustice. The stakes had never been higher, but for the first time in a long while, Al felt a glimmer of hope. With their eyes set on the horizon, they prepared for the inevitable confrontation, ready to reclaim their power and protect those who could not protect themselves. The real battle was about to begin. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and twist like the very fear that had haunted Al Capone for years. He stood at the entrance of the decrepit warehouse, the planned meeting point for the con artist and his crooked syndicate. The air was thick with tension, and he could feel the weight of the decision pressing heavily against his chest. Beside him, Maggie steadied her breath, her fierce gaze locked on the entrance. They had come too far to turn back now. As they stepped inside, the dim light revealed a group of men huddled together, their laughter echoing off the walls, oblivious to the storm brewing just outside. Al's pulse quickened. This was it. The moment he had been preparing for, no longer the fearful man who hid behind the shadows. He felt the lessons learned from the residents of the shelter coursing through him. They had shown him what it meant to stand up and fight, and now he would do the same. Maggie nudged him, her voice barely above a whisper. "We go in together, Al. Remember, we're not just fighting for ourselves, we're fighting for them." Her words struck a chord, reminding him of the vulnerability that had driven him to this point. The power of their unusual friendship surged within him, infusing him with courage. As they approached the group, Al's heart raced. The con artist, a smooth-talking man with a sinister smile, caught sight of them. "Well, if it isn't the guardian angel and his little sidekick," he sneered, his voice dripping with disdain. "Did you come to beg for mercy?" Al felt the anger rise within him, a fire igniting under the con artist's mockery. He stepped forward, fists clenched, and declared, "No more games. You've crossed a line, and I'm here to make sure it ends tonight." The room fell silent, all eyes on him. He could see the incredulity in the faces around him, but this time it didn't matter. He was standing firm, anchored by the resolve he had discovered alongside Maggie. With a swift motion, the con artist signaled to his men, and the atmosphere shifted. They closed in, but Al and Maggie stood together, unyielding. As the first thug lunged at Al, he sidestepped, using the man's momentum to throw him into a stack of crates. The sound of wood splintering echoed like a battle cry, and with that, Al felt the adrenaline surge. Maggie was beside him, her own strength and courage shining through. With a quick move, she grabbed a nearby metal pipe, swinging it with precision, and knocking one of the men off his feet. The bond they had forged was blossoming into something powerful, a dynamic duo fighting against the odds. But just as victory seemed within reach, the con artist lunged at Maggie, intent on bringing her down. Al's heart lurched. He couldn't let that happen. In a split-second decision, he hurled himself forward, intercepting the blow meant for her. The impact knocked him off balance, but he refused to falter. With every ounce of strength, he shoved the con artist back, sending him crashing into a wall. The chaos of the fight reached its peak, but with each blow exchanged, Al felt the weight of his past lifting. He wasn't just fighting for Maggie or the residents. He was fighting for himself, reclaiming the man he had once been. The fear that had gripped him for so long was fading, replaced with a fierce determination to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Finally, as the last of the thugs lay incapacitated on the ground, Al and Maggie stood tall, breathless, but victorious. The con artist, now cornered, looked at them with newfound respect mixed with fear. "You think this is over?" he sneered, but Al knew better. This wasn't just a battle won, it was a war that had begun anew. As they walked away from the warehouse, the weight of their victory settled in. They had overcome not just a physical challenge, but the ghosts of their pasts. Al turned to Maggie, gratitude flooding his heart. "We did this together," he said, his voice steady. She nodded, a quiet understanding passing between them. In that moment, Al knew they had forged a new path. They were no longer defined by their fears or failures, but by their strength and solidarity. The storm had passed, leaving in its wake a renewed sense of hope and purpose. Together, they would continue to stand against the injustices of the world, emboldened by the lessons learned and the friendship that had become their greatest weapon. As the dust settled in the aftermath of the fight, Al Capone stood outside the warehouse, breathing heavily but feeling lighter than he had in years. The tension that had once wrapped around his heart like a vice was loosening, replaced with a sense of empowerment. He looked over at Maggie, who was dusting herself off, her eyes shining with a mix of pride and relief. Together, they had faced a terrifying confrontation and emerged victorious, but the battle was only the beginning. In the days that followed, the neighborhood began to change. The news of their triumph spread like wildfire, igniting hope among the residents of the shelter and the surrounding community. They saw Al and Maggie not just as fighters, but as symbols of resilience. As they walked the streets, children waved, and neighbors offered grateful nods. Al felt the warmth of their appreciation wash over him, a stark contrast to the cold indifference he had once known. Maggie's presence was a constant reminder of their shared mission. She had become more than just a friend. She was a partner in every sense of the word. One evening, as they sat together on the steps of the shelter, Al reflected on how far they had come. "I used to think strength was about power and fear," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "But now I know it's about standing up for others and finding the courage to change." Maggie nodded, her expression serious yet proud, understanding the weight of his words. The impact of their actions resonated deeply, not just with them, but with the entire community. Residents began to rally around the shelter, forming a support network that provided not only safety, but hope. They organized cleanups, fundraisers, and even workshops to empower those who had been silenced for too long. Al watched as the community transformed. It was no longer just a place of survival, but a thriving hub of solidarity and change. Though Al still had ghosts to face, he felt a newfound sense of purpose. He started mentoring young men in the neighborhood, teaching them the value of integrity and the importance of standing up against injustice. The lessons of his past failures became stepping stones for others, and he found joy in their progress. Each success echoed back to him, a reminder that redemption was possible. As for Maggie, she blossomed into a leader in her own right, spearheading initiatives to uplift women in the community. Her fierce spirit became a beacon of hope, inspiring not just those around her but also herself. Together, they had built something beautiful out of the ashes of their struggles, a testament to the strength found in friendship and shared purpose. With each passing day, Al felt more at peace with his past. He had survived the storms, faced betrayal and fear, and emerged stronger. In helping others, he had unwittingly healed himself. The darkness that had once clouded his life began to fade, replaced by a bright horizon of possibilities. As they stood at the edge of their neighborhood one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, Al turned to Maggie. "We did this," he said, his voice filled with conviction. "We've changed lives." Maggie smiled, her heart swelling with pride. "And we'll keep changing them, Al. There's so much more to do." In that moment, they both knew they were ready for whatever came next, fueled by the fire of their friendship and the unwavering belief that they could make a difference. They had not only reclaimed their lives, but had also ignited a spark of hope in others, proving that even in the darkest of times, redemption and solidarity could shine through. You witnessed how the journey of Al and Maggie transformed not only their lives, but also the lives of those around them. Now I want to hear from you. How did this journey touch your heart? Have you ever faced a moment that changed everything? Leave your comment below, and together we can share stories that inspire. If you found value in this message and believe it can resonate with someone else, don't forget to like this video and share it. Finally, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to stay connected with more empowering stories. Your engagement is what makes this community so special.